Hi everybody, welcome to another Marty's tutorial on Excel 2013. Today we're going to be talking about the nested if function, which is a function in Excel. The if function, many of you may be familiar with it. What we're going to be doing today is a little twist on how to nest a function within a function. So let's imagine we have a spreadsheet and we're using it to track students' grades. Okay, very simple spreadsheet right now, just for the purposes of this tutorial. We should be able to demonstrate the power of a nested if statement. And so what I've done is I've got the names, of course, over here. I've got my 4 students. I've got a midterm and a final. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to take column D3 and I'm going to put a little formula in there, and I'm going to say equals. Remember, all functions start with the equal button. Okay, so I'd like to open and close things in parentheses. I don't necessarily need to, but I'm going to say B3 plus C3. I'm going to close my parentheses and I'm going to divide it by 200. The maximum total of any of the exams is 100. So I'm going to divide by 200. That's going to give me my percentage of the 2 exams together. Divided by 200 gives me my percentage grade. So that's what I have in this column right here, and you'll notice we probably get a 0. Oops, did it not work? Oh, yep, it didn't work because I did it down here for some reason. Control X. Let's put it into D3. Okay, so there's my formula. Equals B3 plus C3 divided by 200. Now I'm going to use my fill square in the lower right hand corner of the cell, and I'm going to drag, whoops, wrong mouse button. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to drag it. It turns into a little crosshair. Drag it down to D6. And you notice that my formula has moved all the way down. Now if I actually click on cell D6, you'll notice that it's adding B6 and C6. Okay, Excel is smart enough to know that it's going to move my function relatively with what I'm looking for. Likewise, if I click on D4, it's going to say B4 plus C4. So we're going to do the same thing in cell G3. However, here we're going to use our nested if statement. Let's take a look at it. So, excuse me. So this is what my if statement looks like. Okay? And so in Excel, how you write an if statement is you always start with the equal sign. Anytime you're going to write a function, you want to start with an equal sign, or if you're going to do a formula calculation, always start with the equal sign. And in this case, our function is if. And so what does if do? Well, it's a condition. It's going to test something. And so what I've done up here is I've created a little flow chart, something that we use in computer science to do some software engineering and kind of see what our code is going to do. So in this case, I'm going to test a condition in cell D2. Okay? So if the condition in D2 is greater than 0.895, then the value in cell G2 will be an A. That makes sense. If they get greater than 89.5%, that's pretty much an A in any class. Okay? So again, we write that condition very simply. If, open parens, D2, the cell, is greater than 0.895, that's called our logical test. Okay? That's very important. We need to do a test. So we do the logical test. If the test is true, we're going to separate that by a comma. If the test is true, we're going to display the letter A. If the test is false, we're going to display the letter B. Does that work? Well, kind of. What if the student receives a 69.8%? Are they going to get a B? No, they'll be lucky to get a C. This formula will only return an A or a B. Let's take a look at our flowchart. I'm going to move this formula out of the way a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to actually test again. So if this is true, we're going to display an A. If it's false, we're going to do another if statement. And so if it's false, we're going to test to see if this is true. And if this is true, we're going to display a B. But if it's not true, we're going to come down here and we're going to test some more. So if that's not true, we're going to test D2 again to see if that's true. If that's true, we're going to display a C. If it's not true, we're going to test again. Okay? Is D2 greater than a 595? If that's true, then we're going to display a D. If it's not true, we don't have to test anymore. If by the time we get to the fourth condition, we've tested this thing 4 times, and we know that our grade is not greater than a 595, then we know that our result will be an F. So we can do a simple if then else statement at the very end. So let's see how that's going to look in Excel. So let's go ahead and put some grades in. Whoops, I scrolled down a little bit so I can't see my headings. Here they are. So midterm, John got a 79, but he really picked it up on the final and got a 96. Alright, and so Jane got a 89, and then she kind of messed up a little bit on the final and got a 88. Not bad. Solid B. Joe, 97 and 89. And Julie, not so good. 76 and 45. Well, nobody failed. Let's put a fail in just for the heck of it. So Josh got a 54 and a 52, or a 42, only because I found the 4 key first. And so we got a 48. So let's write our nested if statement. So what do we have to do with this statement? So we're going to start with typing our equal sign. That's always first. And then we're going to say equal if. So here's something beautiful, right? The minute I type equal if, it puts the open parens in for me, and it tells me in this little tooltip the next thing you need to put in is a logical test, and you need to separate that with a comma. You notice that it's in bold, it's inside the parens, it's comma, and then it's looking for a value of true, comma, value of false. Close parens. Let's deal with the logical test. So what was my logical test? Simple. I'm going to test to see if their grade was better than an 89.5%, right? Here's my test. If D2 is greater than 89.5. Alright, that's pretty simple. Notice I'm on D3. Sorry about that. So if D3, here's D3, and you notice if I click in that cell it populates D3 for me. So I'm going to say D3 is greater than, and remember it's 0.895, 895. Okay, if that's true, I'm going to put a comma. Notice the minute I put the comma, what the tooltip did, it highlighted the next parameter. Okay? The next parameter is value if true. So what's the value if this is true? Well, if they got greater than an 895, they deserve an A. Whoops, I missed the quotation there. I missed everything. Woo! No, I didn't. Excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and put a quote, A, close quote. Okay, so that's the value of true. Comma, what's the value? Now the minute I put the comma, what happens? Beautiful. It tells me the next thing is the value of false. So what might I put here? A B? Okay, I could do that. And that actually would work for John, but it wouldn't work for Julie or Josh. Because the truth of the matter is, we have to account for C's, D's, and F's. So what I need to do here is, if the value is false, I need to put in another if statement. Okay? So basically this is what I'm going to put in the next value from here to here. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. It's pretty simple. value if false. What am I going to put? If. Whoops, it should be inside the parens. If. And then open parens. And notice a different color. That's very cool. So if, logical test. Cell D3 greater than 0.795, then value of true. Oops, I made a mistake. That should be D3, of course. Greater than 795. Then if the value is true, let's go ahead and give them B. What if the value is false? We got to test for another condition. So let's put an if and open a parens, and notice it's giving a different color open parens every time, which is beautiful because when we close our parens, it's going to help us to know how many open parens we have and how many closed parens we have. Okay, have to have the same number. So right now we've tested to see if they've got an A. If that's not true, then we're going to test to see if they've got a B. If that's not true, let's test to see if they got a C. If D3 is greater than 0.695, 70%, right? Comma, value of true is going to be a C. Value of false, another if statement. Open parens. Notice another color. If D3 is greater than, what now? 0.595. That's 60%. Then I'm going to put a comma, and you notice it says value of true right after I put the comma. So what am I going to put if the value is true? Well, I'm going to give the student a D. And now if I put a comma, it's going to ask me for the value is false. I don't need to put in another if statement. Okay? These are nested ifs. But at this point in time, I just need to be concerned with if this test is true, then it's a D. If it's not true, I know that it's a what? The student's getting an F. Okay? What's the last piece of this puzzle? We have to close the parens. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 open parens, a black, a red, I think that's green. No, that's purple and green. So let's see what happens when I start hitting close parens. So close parens, close parens, close parens, close parens, and it closed them in the same color order as that I have. So that's beautiful. So now I've got my nested if statement. Now we got to see if it works. Oh, I got a B for an 87.5%. That seems to work. Let's drag it down. So what I'm going to do now is use the fill. Now notice that here it's testing D3, D3, D3. When I use the fill feature and I drag it down, Microsoft Excel is smart enough to know that the formula is relative. Okay, there's a way you can force it by using a dollar symbol to keep the cells that you tell it to keep in the first formula. But in this case, I want it to change to D4, D5, D6, and D7. So let's go ahead and drag it down. Look at that. John got a B, he deserves it. Jane got a B, she deserves it. Joe got an A, he deserves it. Julie got a D, she deserves it. And Josh, unfortunately, deserved and got an F. So that's our nested if statement. It's not that complicated when you think about it. I'm hoping that our little word diagram using the symbols helped. It's just a simple flow chart. Hopefully that showed you how we nested if statements. Basically the if statement is from here to here, and we nested one inside another inside another. Okay? So I thank you again for visiting Marty's tutorials, and please come back and visit us again.